So it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Akiko Takeyama, a leading scholar in Japanese studies. As we'll hear today, Dr. Takayama's work explores the intersections of labor, affect, and sexuality, producing analysis focused specifically on Japan that nevertheless gives real insight into dynamics occurring in other cultural contexts as well. I believe this is specific to Japan and yet somehow recognizable in other contexts. Her work engages Japan so carefully and so intelligently that her theories become portable. By giving careful attention to the types of work male sex workers do, she theorizes the shifting impact of gendered labor markets within the Japanese economy and on individual workers. Despite these potentially depressing topics, Dr. Takayama's insightful analysis and truly incredible ethnographic representations are a real pleasure to engage. I most highly recommend her new book, Staged Seduction, which I also have in real life and she has on the slide, recently published by Stanford University Press. And you're welcome to come up and explore my copy if you don't mind reading through my notes. Dr. Takayama grew up in Japan and graduated from Kansai Gaidai Junior College before moving to the University of Oregon, where she completed a bachelor's and then a master's degree. She did her doctoral work at the University of Illinois in anthropology and is now an associate professor of anthropology and also women, gender, and sexuality studies. I am so thrilled to be she's able to present some of her work today. Please join me in welcoming her.
Well, thank you. Alison, thank you so much. I hope I did not disappoint you. Well, this is my first trip to Michigan, and I'm so happy to be here. And believe it or not, Michigan is one of the first things I learned about America when I was really little. So my grandfather, who is Japanese, who was born in 1910, Meiji time, had only minimal elementary education, knew some one phrase of English and some geography. So the English goes, "This is a pen." This is a pen. It has to be a pen, nothing else but pen. And he also knew there are Great Lakes in America, 5 lakes. It goes Michigan, Huron, Erie, Ontario, Superior. So Michigan, Huron, Erie, Ontario. So this is sort of mantra I learned. So those are the 2 things I knew about America at the age of 7 or so. So I knew that Michigan was a place I was dreaming of coming to, and finally my dream came true. So thank you for having me. And especially, I wanted to thank the Center for East Asian Studies for inviting me. It's a great place and had a great Japanese studies and the history. And I really admire all of the work your professors make and also the smart students I already met. And also wanted to express my special appreciation to Professor Alison Alexi, who is not just a good friend of mine. As you can see, she's so positive always and generous and supportive. And I have to say, it's really rare to have someone like that in really competitive academia. So it's really, really a pleasure to have someone like her. And also, I wanted to thank Nicole Holson for the all travel arrangement. It's a really great trip so far. And okay, so I have to share this anecdote from the Detroit airport to campus yesterday. Airport service driver asked me, "Where do you stay at?" So I said, "Oh, let me see. This is gonna be a graduate hotel." And he goes, you know, the college put VIPs on the graduate hotel. Otherwise, he's going to take to a Holiday Inn or somewhere. So his remarks totally made a day and a trip. So thank you so much for having me. So anyways, my talk today is based on my ethnography, which just came out in the past spring, Staged Seduction. This book is based on my doctoral dissertation research and follow-up fieldwork over more than a decade. somebody told me about the dissertation project, which would be something like a marriage. And naively enough, okay, something sexy, something attractive, but after 12 years, it's more about hard work, patience, and love. So anyways, this is a work of 13 years. I'm so glad to share with you today. So let me, okay, so the host, how many of you know the Japanese host clubs? Oh, good. So, can anyone explain what the host club is for us? Yes. Yes.
It's a club where women come to sort of be entertained by the sort of professional boyfriends for rent who will lavish affection and attention on them and make them feel loved.
Yeah. So many of you might know about geisha or hostess clubs, but Japan has a long history in women, entertaining men and so on. But host club is a flip side, and it's sort of a new phenomenon, although it has a quite history. So that's my research topic, and these are the hosts. And okay, let me study a little bit of broader political, economic, and social context here, since I do not want to give you an impression, oh, this is another exotic, strange subculture of Japan. So, amid the growth of sex-related entertainment and tourism around the globe, an increasing number of ethnographic studies have illuminated female hostesses and sex workers who serve male clients over the last 20 years. Primarily focusing on women, these field-based studies have delineated the nuanced power dynamics that exist between female workers and male clients without presuming male dominance in such relationships. By the same token, the majority of studies have largely inferred, if not ignored, men's experience in sex commerce. Analysis in the pioneering work, 1994 book, Night Work, examined the way that Japanese salarymen utilize commodified services in Tokyo hostess clubs. She has argued the service that these men purchase is, quote, an eroticization less of the woman than of the man. His projection as a powerful, desirable male by way of an admiring female audience. This particular strain of masculinity is an analysis asserts the effect of Japanese corporate ideology that posits loyal employees as productive citizens. Aligning with Allison's work, Kimberly Hunt's recent examination of hostess clubs in Ho Chi Minh City, Dealing in Desire, theorized the situational and relational sense of masculinity among elite Vietnamese businessmen in comparison to other Asian and Western counterparts. Hunt claims that these wealthy Vietnamese use the club space to display their economic power and elevate their position in the global pecking order, deconstructing a dominant Western ideal of masculinity. While these studies extend beyond the microethnography of client-worker relationships to include broader economic and geopolitical context, they largely treat the political economy as an ideological state apparatus and or canvas against which masculinity is shaped and played out. In this way, political economy and masculinity remain discrete categories, and the former subsumes the latter. In addition, men in these studies and dominant imaginaries are social elites who financially afford sex commerce. As a result, non-elite men who work as hosts or sex workers virtually become non-existent. So my talk today aims to shed light on Japanese male hosts who cater to women's desires and the way that they seek to reconcile their sense of masculinity with the feminized and stigmatized sex work they engage in Japan's service-centered neoliberal economy. In Tokyo, the host clubs, handsome heterosexual men in their 20s and early 30s provide female clients with romantic gestures, companionship, and emotional satisfaction that sometimes includes sex. They flirt with a seductive flair, showing a woman romantic interest by holding her gaze and whispering quietly into her ear or complimenting her beauty. They gently touch her legs or laps and sometimes kiss her on cheek, forehead, and or hand. These men, called hosto, typically have limited education and often migrate to Tokyo to pursue fanciful dreams of success and luxury. In Japan, the increasingly precarious labor situation, host clubs offer an ocean of possibility for young men who face the harsh truths of diminished full-time employment opportunities. Okay. So, let me situating the host club. This? Okay. Last 2 decades, following the birth of bubble economy in the early 1990s, early 1990s have deprived Japanese men, especially young working class male, of their hopes and dreams of possessing property, except perhaps for their own bodies. So believe it or not, the first house club actually opened in 1960s as a dance hall and like a social dance, and the dancers were originally called hosts. But those existed underground for many, many years, and during the Japan's bubble economy in 1980s, it started to flourish to attract more of the quote-unquote regular customers. In the origin, most of the clients who went to the host club, the dance floors, are wealthy women, the wives of the corporate executives, the government officials. So, you know, their husband go to the hostess club and enjoy the night, and women stop by the dance hall on the way back from Ginza shopping to their home. The first club was opened right next to Tokyo Station. But along with the Japan's economic shift, the host club started to draw more attention. So some of the shifts I wanted to point out. One is a political economic shift. So from export-oriented manufacturing economy to the domestic consumption-centered post-industrial economy. And obviously, these two produce different natures of products, you know, manufacturing products, material object versus more sort of immaterial, like design, information, emotional satisfaction. That also changed the nature of the labor, and also the labor market has changed more from the Japanese style management that guaranteed, if it's a big company, for the male workers of the lifetime employment, to flexible labor, because service work do not really can keep the stock. People has to be flexibly fit in the need of the clients or the customers. And along with these shifts, socioeconomic context, also the labor market, ideal masculinity has also shifted from corporate wage earner to maybe alternative form of flexible labor as a consumer-oriented masculinity. So to just like refresh what neoliberalism. So it could be really controversial, and depending upon who you are talking, people might slightly have a different explanation. But my way of understanding is the privatization of the state-run businesses of telecommunication, railways, aviation, postal services to produce more profit, and also commercializing anything and everything that can be bought and sold. And so along with these lines, the social ethos might have changed from more conformity, like quote unquote group-oriented ethics, to more individual freedom, especially freedom of lifestyle and a consumption choice. So one way young men like hosts who do not have other skills like educational background or financial capability or job prospectus, but they have something that is body, have deal with these changes is to employ their human capital, communication skills, sensitive attribute, and a seductive masculinity to produce monetary and symbolic values creatively. Based on in-depth interviews with more than 50 male hosts I've conducted in Tokyo Host Club since 2003, today I demonstrate how these men fashion a kind of masculinity that is commercialized and yet also entrepreneurial. With a neuroscience understanding of female psychology, they attempt to seduce women into falling for them and spending exorbitant sums of money on them. In so doing, these men who possess neither material resources or job security actively engage in the country's neoliberal reforms and pry open a new masculine subjectivity positionality. Individual actors in the host club who engage in entrepreneurial enterprising themselves, I argue, epitomize the neoliberal political economy and a new masculinity formation in contemporary Japan. So, oops. Just you might already know, but just like for people who are not really familiar with, this is the model that Japan was really famous in the time of the miracle of the economy. Japan was famous for the so-called Japan-style management, and in this form, family, education, and work are all intertwined for the national prosperity. The family is an important place to provide the personal necessities so that the children who need education, the workers who need to work hard, well prepared. And a kid is supposed to study really hard to go to the top school, right, the hierarchical. And when I was a child in 1970s, there was a saying like, 4 passing, 5 failing. Can you guess what this means? 4 passing, 5 failing. No. Yeah. Yes. If you sleep less than 4 hours and keep, memorizing all these things, you would pass the entrance exam to go to the elite college. But if you sleep more than 5, And so, like after having 7, 8 hours sleep, I feel so good physically, but like I felt already I'm a loser. So, but all, these things motivate these kids and the family to send them to a big corporation which guarantees, or at least promises, lifetime employment in the seniority system. So, all these 3 things intertwined really nicely created this production-centered ethic, hard work, perseverance, and loyalty to the company. But obviously, the lifetime employment was promised for only half of the population, which is men. It's a woman's case, the so-called M-shaped curve. Women who graduate from high school, junior college, or 2-year college or college are supposed to get married, so the employment rate goes up, and at the age of 24 and 30, they might quit the job for the family reasons, and then afterwards they go back to the work and then retire at the age of 55 and 60. But anyway, here's another test. I think in 1980s there was a saying, "Christmas cake, women should." Okay, so this is famous maybe. So what does that mean? Women don't want to be a Christmas cake. Yes, before 25. Why? You know what happens? Huh? Yeah, yeah, too stale. So like the of course, it's not true. Women under 40s. Anyways, but the idea is the Christmas cake is so highly desirable, valuable until the Christmas Eve, the 24th. And in Japan, the Christmas Eve is much bigger thing. Kids are waiting for the night. Couples are celebrating romantic nights. And 25th, the Christmas day is pretty much relaxing, opening, and so on. So the 24th is the key. Surely enough, you're supposed to marry up before the 24th if you're a woman. Anyway, what happened is after they re-enter the labor market, women usually have the part-time. Therefore, this yellow line is a scale of the payment that women had. So this flexible labor was pretty much for the women's realm. Women work in the service-related industries or work as a part-time. But because of the birth of bubble economy and also the flexibilizing the labor force, men are also facing this in non-regular employment. So now I want to talk about a hosting business. So some of the men who coming from Tokyo suburb or outside of Tokyo, somehow dreaming of Tokyo as a place of the opportunity and so on. And this is something maybe true in the U.S. too. The bigger city somehow has the lure of the nice excitement and opportunity myth and certain community building, anonymity, freedom, lifestyle, and so on. So the most of the host clubs are located in the Tokyo, the Kabuki-chō red light district, which is in the middle of Shinjuku district. And so, interestingly enough, if you go to Shinjuku, the west side of Shinjuku is all these high skyscrapers, the metropolitan government, Hilton Hotel, Hyatt Regency, and so on and so forth. Everything is so neatly grid and have a park and beautiful, and everything is tall and beautiful. Whereas going to the east side of Shinjuku Station, that's where Kabuki-chō is located. It's more sort of organic and a mixture of different kinds of sounds, music, and the smell of the food, and just visually too, it's really busy and fluctuated. And surely enough, most of the buildings are like 3 stories and 4 stories. And when you walk in a Kabuki-chō, Kabuki-chō has like 2 parts. One is more like movies and or other sort of entertainment for more mainstream clients. And east side of Kabuki-chō has more of the host clubs and love hotels. You need an explanation for love hotels? Okay, good. All right, so when you walk around the Kabuki-chō, especially the east side, you see these billboards, and obviously these are the hosts. And how do they look to you? Attractive? Laughing? Okay, so. Okay. But obviously, compared to salary men you see on the train, they are very, very different and distinctive. So, like to start with, their hairstyle is usually like medium long hair, feathery. And can you say anything else about them? Huh? Feminine. All right. Why do you say so? Yeah. Yeah, smooth skin, hairless, face, slim, And so on. Then also, like a man tends to be like having this kind of stoic gaze, not like, this kind of playful, womanly like. So the presentation is really feminine and sensitive people. And these people are wandering around in the night to talk to potential clients, to bring them to the host club. And in the book I wrote, I was planning to study the host club, but on the first night, on this particular night, I wasn't really ready to go to the host club. But anyways, a guy spoke to me. It happened to a host, and I ended up going to his host club, and was a seductive moment. You can. My point is, even you know that what you're doing, it's still here's a moment like, really, but maybe. So that's what's happening here. And if you go into the host club, usually the host club is in a self-contained building, no windows and nothing. And as if you leave the reality, the everyday reality behind. And this particular host club is really luxurious, gorgeous representation descending downstairs. You see an open space with expensive chandelier and so on. So even this is sex-related entertainment. It's pretty open space, and you could see who's where and how many people. And this, I argue, is really calculated spatial formation rather than having private rooms in which you don't really know what's going on. But with this kind of open space, competition works. So for both sides, men compete one another to sell more to become a top-ranked host. In a woman's case too, if your competitor opens a new bottle and hogs your host, how do you bring him back? Why don't I open more expensive bottle? So, and this is why the competition goes both way. And so usually women are drawing attention at the center, and men comfort women serving drinks and listening to their day-to-day events, complaints really patiently. And whatever you expect, if you want to have a noisy, fun night, they're going to give you that. If you want to be quiet and being sort of alone but give nice company, they're going to provide that. So at the host club I studied, mainly was women. The clients are women in their 30s and 40s, and mostly those women who went through the Japanese management system, and now those women have a time after their kids going to primary school, and these women start to feel, oh, I devoted so much for the family. Who am I now? I am losing my femininity or sense of self-worth and selflessly devoting to the family. I want to just now enjoy myself. And those women are the main women I met. And the men are mostly young in their 20s and 30s or late teens. Since they could work officially at the age of 18, but usually they had a minimal education, just middle school education or high school dropout. And if they are a college student or college graduate, they created this intelligent host. So that itself showed that they are mostly lack of education or do not really fit Japan's corporate system to work for larger corporations, but they have their bodies and the talking skills and the sensitivity to create emotional satisfaction for women. That's one thing, and doing so, they really try to aim at occupational success and dreaming of luxurious life, fame, and respect. So I just wanted to show a really short video clip to show you how host in motion look like. And let me see. Oh. You know? Let me see. Okay, I think let me first introduce a host, just to give an idea what kind of life they have, and then I wanted to show this video clip. I'm sorry about the this. All right, so okay, let me introduce a host named Koji. This is a book character, so sorry if you've already read the book. On a rainy evening in August 2003, I visited the studio apartment of a 25-year-old Vietnamese host named Koji. I had interviewed off and on over a period of 3 months at Fantasy, the host club I conducted majority of my field work. In the beginning of my research, I was curious what kind of living situation a typical host has, particularly because the mainstream media sensationalize all these successful hosts who are living in a luxurious apartment in a high-end Tokyo neighborhood, and then having all these high-end furniture, audiophile, and expensive watches, suits, ties, columns, jewelry, just you name it. And I keep asking the host, so how many suits do you have? How many ties do you have? And then surprisingly enough, they say, I have only a couple of suits. And how many shoes do you have? I have only 1 or 2 pairs. I'm like, can't be. And so since I was asking these things, a host coach invited me to see a typical residence of the host. So I decided to pick his place. So he lived in not one-room mansion in Japanese, and obviously mansion in this case an apartment. And his place wasn't in such a high-end, decent place in Shinjuku, and about 20 minutes from Kabuki-chō red light district. He was subletting this place from another host who was living at that time with his quote-unquote girlfriend. So I visited his place around 6 p.m. He was getting ready to go to the night of the work. He was already dressed in a slim fit black suit with a glossy gray tie when he opened his door. He was about to completing his stylization of masculinity by setting his hair. Letting me in and sitting down on the carpet floor, Koji immediately lit a cigarette and resumed his preparation. He attentively looked into a hand mirror while he applied dabs of wax to his medium length hair in order to give it a final spiky look. He grew increasingly irritated with the result. I hate rainy days, Koji said. It's so hard to set hair because of moisture in the air. I sat on the other side of the tiny plastic coffee table and listened to him while taking a sip of a pet bottle green tea he gave me. I noticed a hair dryer, a hairbrush, tweezers, an electrical shaver, and a half-full bottle of Bulgari cologne, a cigarette box, cologne all scattered on the floor. On his coffee table, however, 2 cell phones from different providers, a cigarette box, a cheap 100-yen lighter, and a metal ashtray were arranged in order. I found a room a size of 6 tatami mats, or a bit more than 100 square feet, which is pretty small. It wasn't an opulent host apartment I was expecting. Obviously, I was expecting something like home theater system, sleek modern furniture, closet filled with expensive designer suit, collection of rare wristwatches, bottles of fine perfume. Koji's space was very modest. His living quarters contained a tiny coffee table, a worn-out mattress, and a yellow the pillow and the suit, 3 or so long-sleeve shirt, a few ties hanging from a bar hanger next to his bed, and a yellow blanket folded up in the corner of the carpeted floor. They say that hairstyle is life itself to a host. There are actually a few hosts who still take a day off when they can't set their hair perfectly, Koji said. Still struggling with his hair. Just for that, their hairstyle, they take a day off? I asked. Yeah, hairstyle is that important, Koji said. His remarks made smile because of a traditional Japanese saying, hair is women's life. 髪は女の命, not men's. But now it's applied to men. The perfect hairdo boosts your self-confidence, and it reflects in your work. With imperfect hair, you can't concentrate because your mind is subconsciously concerned with your look, and eventually it ruins the night's business. That's why veteran hosts try to avoid such unprofessionalism, even though they have to pay a penalty fee if they skip the work, he says. It's not only the superficial appearance Koji polishes nearly perfectly. He told me that it was typical for him not eat anything before work, and he joked he wanted to maintain his hungry spirit. Not long before I met him, Koji hadn't need to worry about such matters. Between 1997 and 2002, he was a top-ranked host at a small host bar in Kinshicho, a bedroom community in Tokyo, where he said he constantly earned 1 to 2 million yen per month, and as much as 5 million yen, which is about $50,000 per month. It really made me feel sorry about myself. This is a month. Anyways, according to Koji, during that period, he enjoyed living in a $3,000 per month apartment, took taxi everywhere, and bought practically anything he wanted without even checking the price tag. In his late teens, he earned first class prestige and respect among his peers, and he wrapped attention of many women. He was living the life of his dreams in the city he had always dreamed about. Then one day, a year and a half before I interviewed Koji, his Tokyo dream frizzled and flickered out like a broken neon light. One of his clients suddenly disappeared without paying her bill. In the hosting business, hosts are responsible for their client's unpaid bill, and Koji could not cover the debt. He was forced to sell everything he owned, including his pricey designer suit and expensive watches, his computer and TV, even his casual clothes. Despite all that he has lost, and despite living in debt with barely enough to survive on, like many hosts in his circumstances, Koji remains optimistic, firmly focused on his future and committed to his craft. It's the life of a professional host, Koji says, speaking of him in the third person. It is our business to sell dreams. So here I wanted to show a video clip from the documentary film called Great Happiness Space, Tales of an Osaka Love Thief. And especially he mentioned similarly what the hosting is. Okay. Let go. Maybe I should try.
ホストって何って言われたら大体こう夢を売る仕事ってみんな言うんですよ。現実じゃない恋愛をするっていうね。女の子は言ったら恋をしてる。
一星と喋ってると不思議と幸せになれるから。
このホストクラブのお店の中の空間が、まあ、かっこいい言い方で言ったらネバーランドっていうのかな、ピーターパンって現実のない世界に連れて行ったじゃないですか、人間を、まあ、そういう世界に連れてきてるみたいな感覚ですよね、いい言い方をすれば、だからその女の子が払うお金っていうのは夢っていう商品を買ってるみたいな。
恋愛感情って抱くん、客さんに。
抱くんちゃう？抱くのおかしいでしょ。僕ここしか出会わへんやん。出会うとこないでしょ、女性と。だからここでしか恋愛感情動くとこなんかないやん。恋愛感情動くのはここしかないやろ。今まで全部そうやし、付き合ってきた人も全員ホストで知り合った人やし、そうしかないやん。
何をきっかけに付き合おうと。
そんなん分からへん。そんな気持ちやろ。でも長い付き合いせんかったら絶対無理やった。今まではな。そんなもんでしょ。そんなもんでしょ。
逆に
だからお前は今いい感じなんじゃん。俺の中ではな。夢を見せるのはダメなんで、やっぱり嘘つかなあかんとこは嘘つかなあかんし。
Oh, okay. Oh. Oops. So the question I wanted to ask particularly today is how do Japanese men who work as a host reconcile their sense of masculinity with their seemingly feminized appearance and stigmatize sex work and the keywords of consumer logic of commodity values and neoliberal values and self-autonomy and male-centered heterosexual norms. Do I have 5 or 10 minutes? Not okay. I think I went too slow. So I wanted to introduce this host, but maybe let me read some of the quotes. You already have the ideas, but I wanted to introduce another host named Yoshi, who was from Osaka, and he was a #1 host in Osaka, and moved to Tokyo to become a host, the #1 host in Japan. So like becoming a #1 in Kabuki-chō, not Osaka, it's a #1 in Japan. So anyways, he said the hosting doesn't really require any of the special skills except being a biologically male, especially in this host club and many of the clubs. But he didn't think that was so much easy to flirt with women and make a living. And so he had to observe what other people doing in the club, the host, and then incorporate it in his business skills. And one of the things among others, he said he really struggled with learning and incorporating this business style called pillow business. You can imagine what the pillow business. So, meaning that having a sexual relationship with the female client. And he said the first client of his was, this host was 25 years old when I met him in 2004. His first client was in the mid 50 years old. And for him, women in the mid 50 were old because his parent and mother was like in her 40s, and he assumed that women in older age, according to him, do not have any sexual desire or something. But one day she invited him after the host club and going to the so-called after-hour activity to her residence in Osaka, and she had a nice 2-story building, and she self-identified she's a antique dealer. So her house was filled with all these expensive pots, plates, and so on. But anyway, she was drunk and served the tea, sat next to him, and started to say, I feel I'm a little bit drunk. And then put her forehead on his shoulder. And the next moment, she made a move. And according to Yoshi, he didn't know what to do. And he dodged her attempt to kiss him. And he just apologized and then left the space. And the next day, he told his senior host saying, you know, what happened. And he expected to draw some sympathy. And despite his expectation, his senior said, no, it's your business. You got to do it. And so he tried, and he even, gosh, I don't know, the audience might be too young. So okay, he pretended his orgasm. Is that okay? You know, like if you were 18 or 19, especially after the election shock of the not erection, but election. So anyways, so obviously the sex is a part of this business, and many of the hosts admit that it is the part of the business. But interestingly enough, they had all sorts of logic to re-invert their positionality in the society, and one of the logic they use is the what I call the post-industrial consumer logic of commodity values. So Yoshi, who attempt to reverse host low status in the occupational hierarchy, remember top, the second tier in the family business, maybe the host is the belly bottom, asserts in Japan, salarymen provide financial support to their wives and family and spend money on their hostesses. And those women spend money on their host. See, the money doesn't flow back to the salaryman, meaning they are the least valuable and desirable in a society. So obviously in this logic, consumption is valued over production, and also the flow of money determines what is valuable. So the spending rather than saving or earning, and the value of things only come to being when those things are bought and sold. Otherwise, the use value doesn't really present. So in this economic logic, the one who possesses a desirable body and commodifies it has the upper hand over those who are simply wage earners. And another thing is they highly value the self-autonomy or independence. So the narrative might go, Daisuke is a veteran host who used to be a bar owner, has never experienced being a salaryman at a corporation. He says he expressed pity for corporate salarymen by saying, hosts, or they say like, you know, the salarymen in the trains are so beaten up, always drunk and looking tired, no energy and so on. But in contrast, he says, hosts are like self-employed entertainers and professional entrepreneurs and professional entertainers who rent the host club space and do their own business independently. So this really logic problematized Japan's paternalistic corporate culture, which doesn't allow individuality, creativity, or entrepreneurial mindset, and instead promote entrepreneurial mindset. So this is the context wherein hosts strategize their self-narratives when they describe their pillow business, even they are the sex workers. They still say, for example, and this is where I think male-centered heterosexual norm works in this particular quote. Yoshi again says, who self-identified pillow hosts still avoid the label sex workers, saying sex work to him meant having no control over his clients or his own body. Hosting, on the other hand, gives him the freedom to decide whether or not to conduct pillow business as a business strategy or when. So this is obviously based on a heterosexual norm, men as the active sexual agent, women who as a sexual object. Women are the object, therefore they could be the victim of the sexual assault and so on, but men are the active role, impossible, like in an imagination, are impossible to be sexually exploited. So the host used the silence around men's sexuality or the sex work, taking advantage of the silence surrounding men's sex work. They actively deny a lack of self-autonomy over their sex traits. But obviously, this refined line is really the embodiment of their struggle to reposition themselves. On one way, they are better desirable in this consumer logic, and they maintain self-autonomy and entrepreneurial identity in contrast to beaten up salarymen. And again, they try to be a sexual agent vis-a-vis sexually objectified women. So in conclusion, so the performance of Japan's host entrepreneurial masculinity is, I argue, the embodiment of a human capital to exercise their seductive power, the power that appeals to potential customers and fuel the want of their labor in exchange for money. Thus, seduction not only involves evoking and manipulating the other the feelings to produce satisfaction, it also entices seducees to serve the end of the seducers themselves. For example, Yoshi seduced his wealthy clients to spend exorbitant sums of money on him in order to increase his sales and secure his top-ranking status in the host club. His seductive flair fed into the club's profit-making too. This kind of subtle power enables hosts to highlight their agentive production of economic and symbolic value out of nothing, while downplaying their stigmatized sex work and commodity status. By the same token, seductive power is highly contingent on felicitous performativity in the making of economic values and new masculinity. This often renders hosts vulnerable to self-exploitation, excessive overtime work, alcohol consumption, and service to others needs in the name of professionalism. Aware of their low status in mainstream Japanese society, however, they justify such exploitative labor conditions as a necessity gateway to future success. So despite their compelling consumer logic of value, neoliberal virtue of self-autonomy, and the heterosexual norms of male agency, host labor practices are not simply a reflection of a changing hegemonic masculinity. Male host risk-taking in the hope of a profit is rather a result of their strategic alignment with heterosexual masculine norms when they are desirable, and also their rejection of them when undesirable. In so doing, they actively participate in the promise of new entrepreneurial masculinity and its capitalization in Japan's service-centered neoliberal economy. Thank you so much. Did I go over? Thank you for being patient.
You also made the best election joke I've ever heard.
L and Earl is so difficult to pronounce. Oh, yeah.
So, I'm curious, sort of in the international stage of things, are we seeing the rise? You mentioned sort of hostess clubs in Vietnam. Are we seeing, or do you think we will see a rise of host clubs outside of Japan?
That's a good question. I oftentimes can I see any other places where the host clubs flourish? I heard there's some in Korea, but the setting seems to be similar and also different. So similar in the way most of the targeted clients are hostesses or the female sex workers, or those who work in the red light district stop by the host club after their work. And I heard in the past in Taiwan there was a few, but it seemed to me more of the East Asian establishment. The hostess club itself does not quite exist in the U.S., the West. So yes, like a gigolo, the more individual-based escort service is available, but more this institutional, like the hostess club or host club seems to be limited to East Asia so far. But then I heard, read in New York Times, in Nevada actually, okay. The people who want to be an actor in California, Hollywood, go to Nevada and have a female pattern and polish their masculinity or acting or getting financial resources. So those are the only places I know. So I can't really say this is really spreading out other places or limited. That did you hear the question? So like, okay, you're like a young and vital, you might be desirable and valuable, but once you reach age 40 to 50 and losing youthful, attractive appearance, what's going to happen to them? That's a really good question. Since they don't really develop career itself, so even though they dream of becoming a big or making financial capability and move on to something next, usually it doesn't really work. But in a sense, what host dream is okay, I have to say, like a Mr. Trump, somebody who is really good in one thing and then knows how to mobilize people maybe and then go to the next. So that's at least the host imagines. And so like one of the example was the Takafumi Horie was the Japanese character who created the internet protocol company who was really successful, and he was such a character, although he had all these different problems, and he's now so well perceived. But at least they dream of becoming something big, but they are not quite sure what it means. Something larger than life without really finally defined. And in the book, I argue this kind of aspirational model, more individual-based rather than being a salaryman and have a stable lifestyle, but you have a chance to be a big and do something really influential in the world and draw the names. I mean, the respect and the popularity is the the incentive for many of the men who try to work really hard for the little money. And in that sense, many people are, I have to say, exploited because of the dreams. Yes.
I just have a question about the like sort of the rate turnover rate with hosts, because the job they do is in many cases really unhealthy. Like they were showing it in that movie Great Happiness Space, not in the clip, but like in other parts where they're showing some of the guys like drink so much every night they destroy their livers, they have to throw up, or like they get sort of like tracheal burnings from vomiting or things like that. It's like a very unhealthy lifestyle. So is there like a massive like turnover rate, people who just can't do the job anymore, even like without getting old?
It is. That's also like the health-wise. It's really demanding. Looking easy work, just like in the nighttime between say 7 to 1 or 1 to 5 sounds good if you make a lot of money. But in reality, they drink like fish and just keep drinking because the selling drink is after all the increase of the sales. So they drink and then open the champagne bottle and going to the restaurant and vomit and come back and drink. So obviously, and then heavy chain smoking, wee hour work, and then their private time, their clients calls, and they're talking on the phone over 3 hours. Okay, so anyways, my point is they lack of nutrition and sleep and healthy life, so ruin their health, and so only people who can deal with it stay in this business. So some people just last only 3 days or so and giving up, or they cultivate different forms of selling. So instead of them drinking, if they can't drink, let their junior drink for the table and so on. But it's not really healthy. So in that part too, although they are self-employed, so technically they can't really be labeled that's exploited by the capitalist owner or something, but I have to say the labor condition is really exploitative. Yes.
My question is, to what extent are the hosts aware that they're being exploited by the host club system? In the book, you had described that there's like some military techniques towards getting the men to listen to their superiors, their or stage arguments during the meetings. There's the pyramid structure, which encourages more competition for more money to the host club, and like half of the money they get from women are put back into the club as opposed to going into their own pockets. It's generally recognized that host clubs are exploitative of women. Like it's known in society that they're fake relationships, and maybe some women offer it, but as a whole there seems to be recognition that host clubs are exploiting women. So I guess to what extent do men who want to be hosts know that they're getting into an exploiting phase?
It's great. Did you hear all the questions? So, like, many people imagine women are exploited to be seduced and spend so much money to the extent they might be in debt, but we might not really pay much attention how these men are exploited and how they perceive the exploitative labor conditions. That's a great question, and they know this whole system is exploitative. Many of the penalty system, this and that, like all sorts of deduction from the salary, and also competitive, constantly on highly alert to be competing with one another. But they have to make a choice, either staying in that business or they can technically walk away. So the club claims that they could quit the job any point, but usually these are people who do not really have a credential for many other things, and their life really evolves around this nightlife and hostel club, so they don't really know other social network. So within this limited opportunity and environment they are put in, many of the hosts ends up justifying this competitive system is a gateway to be successful in the future. And this might be really like, oh, poor host, but I have to say many of the working condition today, whether it's a hosting club, academia, or the computer industry, you have to do maybe 2 free internship before get a paid internship, or so the assistant professor have to produce this much, that much, this, you could technically walk away, but can you find another tenure track job? No. So we are aware of these things, but to some extent we're stuck.
I wonder how much you study hostess side, but I'm curious the biggest similarity and the biggest differences between host and hostesses.
Yeah, the host club and the hostess club, even though just the gender roles are flipped, existing social expectations, social context is different. So actually quite interesting juxtaposition, and then especially something really interesting to me in terms of difference and also maybe similarity. Similarity is some sort of this virtual relationship brings self-esteem or emotional satisfaction or these things. for that matter, it could be a pet, maybe. It doesn't have to be people. But there's something really different between those two. But yet overlapping is in both space, actually, men are the protagonists. So obviously in the hostess club, men are the one who show off the money and the center of the attention and so on, and the women are the, the supportive feminine audience. Wow, you were great, you were so sexy and so on. And then the host club, yes, women are treated like a desirable, attractive women and so on, but after all, the competition is all about these men. So like from women, I help him to become a top-ranking host by spending money. So this discourse is really similar, right? Like at the home, mothers or the wives, I'm gonna work hard to make my kids really successful, my husband really promoted well. So this logic is again employed in the host club too. So I have to say, in both sides, more male-dominated. And something tricky in the host club is, so these women are not totally passive. They could say, oh, I am the one who made this, a poor or young host, a top-ranked one. And so in that sense, they really display their financial capability and independence or the strengths. But when they talk about relationship with the host, all of a sudden switch the positionality. Oh, I am the one who is loved by this top-ranking popular host, right? So the object of love rather than an agent to create something. So gender definitely speaks in this different space, interestingly. Oh, hold on. Oh, you are the first. Okay, yeah. Yes, you are.
I was going to say thank you. This is really, really interesting. You maybe spoke to my question in the book. I haven't read it yet, but I now
Sure,
want to.
of course.
But I was curious as to, you spoke about the neoliberalist structure that's kind of helping underpin a lot of this post-work. And I was also curious, along with neoliberalism, often now especially comes globalization. And I was wondering if you see an impact of globalization on the host club setting in terms of people who go on tourism trips, or even if just someone, I know I hear oftentimes many people who come from outside Japan are intrigued. I suppose there's an Orientalist aspect to it too, where they hear someone talk about a host club, or maybe a host is on the street, and so then you have a lot of foreign people going to these clubs. And is it the same type of, are they a demographic for many of these hosts? Is there a different approach now to maybe someone who is Japanese as opposed to what maybe someone who is foreign would be looking for in a host?
That's a great question, which I didn't talk in my book. Okay, so in this kind of business, globalized, or who are drawn into this kind of business, and interestingly, maybe because of the hosts who do not have this global awareness or English competency, and they are most familiar with the logical cause of romantic love, reading women's novel and erotic novels or television dramas, so they know what Japanese women are romantically attracted by certain locations, certain allusion to the word, a certain phrase, and so on and so forth. So the arousal or the romantic setting making is really culturally constructed. So I think the seducing a Japanese woman is one way, but seducing American women or any other woman would be a different way. So they usually target only Japanese women that they know best. And the Japanese host clubs usually owned by the Japanese ex-hosts. They are, again, like lack of education and so on. So it's really closed field having their own breed. And so in that sense, it's not really internationalized. You can visit the club, but usually it's like only 1 or 2 times fun, rather than like Japanese women totally into repeatedly visits the club. That's my observation. Thank you for the question. Did I know you, Kuni, you had the question.
Kind of like overlapping with the third question, because I was also interested in demography of the house. Because if you think about the comparison between hostess club and host club, they have a well-established category of Philippine pub, for example. Like listening to what you say, I started to wonder, like, to be a protagonist customers. Like, but in Philippine part, maybe like male customers are satisfied that like obedient, like Filipino host is just quietly listening to what he says. So like I was wondering, how like globalization or diversity of like Japanese population could be reflected in the demography of the host.
That's really, I love this conversation, especially so like a gendered aspect and also racial ethnic aspect. So the racial aspect, women tend to certainly expect men to take initiative in dating a romantic thing, but take initiative in a way to perform romance for women that they want. In other words, they have a certain way, I want to be seduced this way. I want to be this kind of romantic night, but I'm not going to say, take me here and there. Expect that man, stage everything and it satisfies me. So that, if that's the women's let's say. Yeah, so like the taking initiative is really a big thing. So like a Philippine pop, these Filipina women speak broken Japanese or doesn't really take initiative. Being obedient is totally fine, but in a host club, if host cannot speak Japanese, cannot really take initiative, it's really hard unless there's a woman who wants to patronize such a man. So here's the gendered thing. And maybe racially too, I haven't really thought of, but this longing something exotic, something spillier, or maybe longing for something exotic, but either extreme. So racial difference might speak those, but if you have any idea, you can help me. I haven't really thought of that, but thank you. Yes?
Actually, I have a question about the ethnic diversity in host. Usually, including Japan and other countries, there are many foreign nationals who work in city jobs, difficult, dirty, and something like that. But is that also happens in a host club in Japan? I mean, because of the lack of supply of hosts. So there are many foreign nationals come to Japan and work in the host club.
Oh, you mean like the foreigners working in the host club? Not really, as far as I know. Indeed, many of the so-called guest workers exist in Japan and they're feeling the labor shortage, like food processing, plates, or manufacturing, now and so on and so forth. But service industry, especially hosting, I didn't really see the aspect of foreign guest workers or the immigrants working behind. Having said that, I learned a lot of the migrant workers or guest workers working to make Japanese obento lunch boxes that is sold like $300 or $3 today. So maybe in that kind of market, selling cheap things to the mass consumers might exist. I don't know. I haven't really thought of, but maybe this special niche where customers are expected to spend a lot, they might not really hire the ethnic minority. I just don't really know. But empirically, I didn't really see guest workers or foreigners working in the host club. But there are Korean hostess club in Koreatown, so they might have a different take. But I didn't really study those. Did you? Oh.
You meet any host who could be an actor?
Oh, could be. Oh, yes. Actually, one of the hosts self-identified an actor. So, yeah, actor could be tricky, but it could be an actor of play, could be a movie, could be television, could be even adult video. So I can't really say. But I met only one who said he's an actor. But in an older time, many of the dancers or the actors who didn't fit the corporate model had this hosting job as the secondary work. Did I answer to your question? Okay. Did you have any thoughts about that?
I thought that there are similarity or something.
Oh, similarity between the actors and the hosts?
I just wanted to add on.
Yes.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
My classes, when we were reading this book, we ended up having a long discussion about is the labor, the affective labor of being an actor, the same as the affective labor of being a host, right? And I think that one of the things that at least some people were arguing was that being a host is actually harder because you can't turn off. Like if you go and you act for 12 hours a day, you know you're acting, you can go home and you can be yourself again. But I'm so appreciative of your question because I think you're thinking along the same lines that we were as a group. So
Oh, thank you. It really makes sense. Yes, like both hosts and actors, to some extent, professors. We all perform to, present certain characteristics because audience expects. And so on. But in that sense, yes, we all work on the performance of the self to present certain characteristics by imagining certain audiences. Maybe the differences between even acting for the movie and acting in the play would be different because the relationship with the audience would be different. So if the movie is more separated production and distribution and consumption, imagined audience behind the scene, the camera, and the play is more maybe interactive in terms of the space and the exchange of the reaction, and a host club would be most intimate in that sense, so that really to extend individually catering to their wishes and needs and so on. And you're right, there is no distinction between here's a club and after that I don't see you or I don't know you, but today, thanks to the modern technology, you're connected 24 hours, so a lot more intensive labor maybe with the host.
maybe last question.
Oh.
I do believe in the beginning of the lecture that gentleman mentioned that this appearance and the hairstyle style of the host are really feminine to the Western culture and
Yes.
ideology. So I do believe there are some like ideology of masculinity in Japan similar to Western culture, like stronger men and like powerful men are masculine than this kind of host. But do you think there are two different criteria for masculinity in Japan right now? Like how this kind of femininely host can be masculine, very attractive to the client? And if these two criteria exist, how can they conflict to each other or coexist in Japan?
Good question. Surely enough, there are multiple masculinities, so like athletic or dandy type, really macho kind of type is one masculinity, and the other side would be more like a feminine, sort of like sensitive presentation. And it could be a reflection of what women expect men, and also what the mothers want their sons to be. And there are some arguments, especially like feminists, like Ueno Chizuko, who argued this was like a multi-generational project. Mothers wanted their sons to be sensitive, and the daughter-in-law wanted to take over, and so on. So those are the types, and also maybe the feminized type, the arbor boys. Have you heard that right pronunciation? Arbor, correct? Arbor. So those eat only grasses, not really aggressive, tamed, and not even sexually active. So all sorts of gradation in between. The mapping of masculinity. I didn't really do these spatial mapping in a contemporary context. I was more juxtaposing against this salaryman-based, like hard-working, sucking your vulnerability and like persevere and keep moving and providing for the family versus more individual-based freedom, flexibility. I enjoy whenever I can. I don't really care about the future because who knows kinds. But I have to think about other forms of masculinity in terms of contemporary Japan. Oh.
Can you maybe ask her after? I know people have to. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so very much.